Welcome to the Jack Mountain Bushcraft Podcast, episode 126.
Welcome to the Jack Mountain Bushcraft Podcast with your host, Jack Mountain Bushcraft School founder and Master Main Guide, Tim Smith.
I'm your host, Tim Smith. I'm a registered Master Main Guide and have been a full-time outdoor instructor and guide since founding the Jack Mountain Bushcraft School in 1999. We help people become more skilled, more knowledgeable, more experienced, and more confident in the natural world through our bushcraft and guide training semester programs and multi-week canoe and snowshoe expeditions. You can check out the show notes to all of our podcasts at blog.jackmtn.com. If you're interested in learning more about our college-accredited and GI Bill-approved programs, visit the Jack Mountain Bushcraft School on the web at jackmtn.com. And check out our online network and digital learning academy at bushcraftschool.com. Hello and welcome back to the Jack Mountain Bushcraft Podcast. We're recording this on June 30th, a Sunday morning after an all-night rain. You've got Tim and Oz coming at you today.
How you
doing? And we're just post-coffee morning, so I'm on the downward slide. I've had my burst of caffeine and my burst of energy, and now I'm just going to get into lethargic mode for kind of a rainy, stormy Sunday afternoon. We just wrapped up week 2 of the summer 2024 Wilderness Bushcraft semester, and things are moving right along with this group. We had last course on the canoe expedition. If you watched any of those videos, we may have talked about it as well, but we had to evacuate somebody because she just sliced half of her thumb pretty badly with a knife, and we had our first trip to the emergency room for this course this past week. We had a guy, was it just his hand and his hand and his thumb?
Hand and his thumb.
Yeah. And every time we get these injuries, people are always, they come up with the same story. They always say, I knew it probably wasn't safe what I was doing, but I decided to do it anyway. I was just going to take this one little shortcut, and as a result, I spent 5 hours getting stitched up.
Yeah.
Including, the drive to the hospital and the sitting there waiting to get it done. But everybody always feels shame, I would say, as a result of knife cuts. And it's good. I think shame is a good tool for us to use there.
Absolutely. Plus, you have to sit and watch everyone else do work while you get to do nothing really because you're waiting to heal up. So,
yeah,
the forgiveness line out here is not much.
So he's kind of been out of action for a few days. We started making paddles the other day. We've been in the boats pulling canoes, and he's now got to keep this thing dry and clean and wash it. So, kind of relegated to sitting in the bow of the canoe and not getting any reps. And that's incredibly frustrating for people, to be out here having some of the same struggles as everybody else, like with the heat and the bugs and the weather and stuff, but then not being able to see any gains as a result of being out here. It's a challenge.
Not only that, but when we were out, the bugs were attacking his cut. So his hand swelled up about 3 sizes bigger than normally was because he just had the deer flies eating out that flesh from the stitches. So it got pretty gnarly.
The deer flies have been pretty bad. We had another guy on the course. He got bit so much his hands looked like a cartoon character where they swelled up. It literally looked like he had boxing gloves on.
Yes.
And we had that afternoon, I rode the e-bike up the hill, and when you drive a car down the road into the field school now, probably 200 of them swarm the car, and they're dive bombing the windshield and trying to smash into you. And I did it on a bike, so it was like the bug apocalypse. It's not something I would ever want to experience again, and it was something that I was sort of just aghast, and my thought process was, I can't believe this is actually happening right now. This is worse than a Hollywood movie.
Last year they weren't. I mean, they were around and they'd dive bomb you and they'd mess with you, but they weren't biting. This year it's they're out of control. Number one, there's 10 times more, and they're beating up all the other bugs, obviously, because they're the only ones around. And they're biting though this time, so it's a little tougher, but. We get through it.
I noticed the deer flies specifically directly related to the temperature. Those really hot days, they're incredibly bad.
Yes, and if the sun comes out.
Yeah, but then you get a cooler day, and they're nowhere near as... Like the other day after it rained, and it was
then you
nice
just
and
get
cool.
the no-see-ums and the mosquitoes.
Yeah, the many seasons of biting flies of northern Maine. Someday I'm going to write an article. And, you think it's bad when the black flies are out, but then the mosquitoes come out. And at least, they're not as bad during the day. But then you get the hot days and the deer flies and the mosquitoes at night and throw the no-see-ums in and the horse flies if we're on the water.
Yes.
Yeah, but, hey, we don't have ticks.
Yeah.
I guess we can say that.
Yes.
No ticks.
Yes. And we don't wear bug juice up here either, so we don't take the easy way out and kind of shelter ourselves from, what our environment is. And there, we have reasons for that, but that's just, the way we do it is usually with a smudge pot, and we tend to stick with the old ways. So,
long pants, long sleeves, a big hat, physical barriers, and smoke.
Yes.
So the thing is, you stand in the smoke plume from the smudge pot till you can't stand it anymore, and then you go feed the flies till you can't stand that anymore, and then you go back to the smoke, and eventually it'll be winter.
Yep. Or your skin hardens up.
It is such a. It's so interesting to see somebody who hasn't spent time out here, and just view the sometimes horrific nature of the bugs, and then. You see somebody who's been here for a bit and they just sort of shrug it off, right? It's not optimal, but there's really nothing we can do about it.
Well, I'm like that with you. I mean, you come down in shorts every day. I have socks pulled up to my knees with pants on so nothing can get up. And I don't know how you do it. Short sleeve shorts, you got moose hide on your legs. It must be because I've literally seen the mosquitoes land on you and then try and then just fly away. So
yeah, I'm blessed. Maybe I don't know. I didn't get the genetics where I was 10 feet tall and could dunk and make $1 billion playing basketball or anything, but for some reason my legs can take a lot of abuse from the bugs.
They really can.
Yeah. Other current events. Again, we started carving canoe paddles the other day. People have been hard at work on that. In past years, I never had a bunch of plastic canoe paddles around because I just never wanted them. This year, because we ran the canoe expedition first, I bought a bunch of those plastic paddles. So my point is that in past years, we were always under the gun to get these paddles done as quick as we could so we could get out on the water. But we've been out on the water since week one here, using the plastic paddles. And the plastic paddles, not optimum. And that's been a great motivator to get people to push through and finish their wooden paddle. Because they're like, oh, I hate this plastic paddle. And I was like, we've got a solution for that. We're going to make one. You're going to make yours.
So they hang out until 8 o'clock at night carving paddles.
Yeah, they did the other day. People were working till late. Usually we quit at 3, 3:30, 4, somewhere in there. Give people a chance to get to town for the day. And they always have a lot of academic work to do at night, but people were just hanging around. But I'm convinced, I had a couple of chickens in a smoker, and the second they were done, the students just descended on that like a bunch of hungry vultures.
And then, they were gone.
And the second the chicken was gone, okay, I'm leaving by going back to Moose Vegas. It was
no dinner
funny.
for Tim.
Yeah, it was pretty funny.
They're a great class, though. I have to say that these guys work hard. They bring enthusiasm every single morning. So yeah, I'm really enjoying this class in particular.
Yeah, me too. It's fun, right? I think you've been here long enough now to see every class has a little bit different energy.
Absolutely.
And as a group, obviously every class is made up of individuals and all of them are different, but each class seems to be, slightly different.
Yes.
And it's fun. It's a fun way for us to teach traditional skills. And again, I've always felt like I'm the luckiest guy alive because I get to do what I do.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that it's easy.
No.
For sure. So let's get people up to date on the planning process for the solo canoe course coming in September.
Yeah. I've been sitting down Rick and I have been planning nonstop. We usually talk on the phone a couple times a week. He's got a lot of stuff going on with his business that he's running. I think we're really putting together something special here. I think that this first iteration, we're really going to be learning a lot. I think we have some pretty motivated students.
And we're about half full?
About half full right now. One of the things that has come up is everyone who's gotten a hold of us thus far has not been a graduate of one of the long-term courses. So their first question was, hey, I really would love to come to this course, but according to the prerequisites, I'm not qualified. Would it be okay to come? And they had been through some of the 1-week courses, I believe. If you feel that you're capable, if you feel that your canoe skills are, up to par, then get a hold of us, and we can try and work something out. So
because the whole point is to get better, right?
Yes.
So I guess for the prerequisites, maybe it wouldn't be appropriate for somebody who's never done any canoeing, hasn't had any instruction or has 0 miles. They would probably hold the class back a little bit. But if you've done a little bit, you're comfortable in a boat, you're in reasonable physical condition.
And like it says on the website too, right? This course in particular isn't about the trip, right? We will be going out, we will be getting on the rivers, but this is more about the day-to-day, right? How am I setting up my gear? How am I setting up my canoe? What am I bringing? How do I plan my routes? How do I navigate? How do I set up emergency plans? How do I do self-aid? How do I repair my canoe if something happens, right? So there's a lot of information that's going to be shoved into a small amount of time. So we're not going to be so much focused on the trip. The trip is going to be something where we take advantage of that trip to teach the information that needs taught. But the information that needs taught is obviously the focus of the course.
Not just getting 400 miles under your belt in some remote location.
No, and that is kind of the second phase, right? We are looking to train you up so that you can go home and open up some rivers in your home. Maybe go explore that river you've been eyeing for a long time, right? If you're like Tim, if you're like me and you love to stare at maps and you love hey, I wonder where I could go canoeing if I was in Montana or if I was in this state, right? We just stare at maps. We stare at rivers and wonder if anyone's ever canoed this. I mean, I'll look at streams on the map here in Maine and try to look up any information, right? Just so I can get on a body of water that maybe no one's been on in a while and get some new information. But that's what we want to encourage. We want people to get out there and start doing these things and start, opening up rivers in their homes and bringing this stuff to everybody around them. So,
I mean, there's really only one river on my bucket list at this point. The Whiskey River that Willie Nelson sings about. Like, what a jerk Willie Nelson is for singing about that. I spent 10 years of my life before the internet came out, like looking at maps, trying to find this Whiskey River. Turns out he just made it up. Doesn't even exist.
Son of a bitch.
If Willie Nelson was here right now, I think I'd say something really passive-aggressive.
Yeah, so we're really looking forward to this. And yeah, if you think that this course is something that fits you, especially with time being an issue for a lot of folks, this is going to be a week long, but we're going to cram a lot into there. So, feel free to get a hold of us, and we're looking forward to it for sure.
So just a quick note on we get a lot of questions about our 6-month expedition instructor, kind of the big course, knits all of the other things together into a nice, discrete package, and it's hard. I think we take 4 people is the max we take for that, and the reason why, you'd think, hey, why not just do that? And the biggest reason is because it's hard to do, and a lot of people don't finish it. I think once people realize that the challenges of living outside and working towards very specific goals.
I think this year actually you took 5, and we've already lost 2, and we have.
No, I don't, Matt's not. Matt's just doing the 2.
Randy.
Oh yeah, I guess we did take 5. So,
yes.
And we're down 2. So yeah, well, last year we had we lost 4.
Yes.
Yeah, last year we lost 4 throughout the course. Courses, only one person made it to the finish, and I have the good fortune to be sitting here with that person this morning. And this year, yeah, we're down 2. And I think people probably understand the physical nature of something like that. Like essentially, if you get a bad injury or something, maybe that's it for you, just because you can't continue to do all those very physical things. It's a very physical lifestyle. And we've had people like, carpal tunnel, things like of that nature. We've had like knife cuts. We had, what was the woman last year? Was it her back?
Her back.
She had back issues, and that kind of precluded her from. So I think people understand, at least to some degree, the physical nature of long-term wilderness living, and people try to prepare for that the best they can. And we found that sometimes, even if someone's like in great physical shape, super strong, super fit, like sometimes the woods kind of chew them up a little bit. But what we really wanted to talk about today is the mental game of long-term wilderness living and the challenges that brings. And it's something that I don't think modern people really grasp, is that it's a challenge to live differently. We're all creatures of habit, and to go and live a certain way that's maybe dramatically differently than you've spent the last number of years or your entire life, like that's hard mentally. It's hard for the brain. So obviously the goal for our long-term programs is to do something enough so that it becomes a part of you and that you'll never forget it, right? To get that many reps where I understand what it's like to cook on a fire every day. I understand what it's like to live the expedition lifestyle where every day, regardless of everything else I'm doing, I've got to haul some water. I've got to cut up some wood in order to cook on later, in order to, wash dishes and things. You're doing these things every single day. You're constantly paying attention to the weather, all those aspects. But I think that certain things about that get to people.
Absolutely. I think it's completely foreign to most people in today's society to think so far ahead, right? You're always planning. I'm always thinking how many fires ahead I need to be, right? Am I gathering stick bundles? Do I have tinder to start a fire? Is rain coming? These are the challenges that the students are facing every single day. And even, simple things like that, you have to get into a rotation. You have to be disciplined with your time. And I think that is the hardest part of the mental game, is going from, even if you live somewhat of a disciplined life, you really have to be disciplined in the woods with your time. Otherwise, you run out of time to do things, right? You find yourself making dinner still at 9 o'clock at night, right? Because you let things go for too long, or you don't have enough time to eat breakfast in the morning because you didn't get up early enough and do the right things, and now class is starting. So now you're dragging by noon, and then you get an hour for lunch, and maybe you don't feel like you get enough time, so now you're dragging on, and then by dinner comes around, you're exhausted. So proper prior planning is extremely important, and I think for me, the thing that gets me through most any challenge I set myself to is that I love it before I go to it, right? I get that sitting around and looking at the YouTube videos or looking at pictures of the woods in Maine and being in a canoe, and it brings these feelings of romanticism, right? Like, oh man, I would love to live like that. And we read Thoreau and we think it's this romantic way of being, but it's hard, man. It's hard when you're like, your pillow is molded because it's been, right? Like it's been raining for 2 weeks straight, and you can't figure out why the mosquitoes keep getting into your tent, and you're getting bit by something every single day, and you feel like you're running a calorie deficit at all times, and you're still falling behind on work, right? And that is when the love for this kicks in, and you go, man, there's no other place I'd rather be, right? I don't care about the heat. I don't care about the rain. I don't care about the work. I don't care about the bugs. This is where I want to be. And that's what gets you through these times, right? And for me, that's what got me through the 6 month was it was never a thought to go home. This is where I need to be. This is where I want to be. And I think that she calls who she calls. You know, you have your own story about, you know, the woods speaking to you, and I think she calls who she calls, and sometimes, you know, it doesn't work out for everyone, and I think that's a good thing though too, right? I think
it's a really good thing to have standards and say, clearly delineate where the finish line is and what it's going to take to get there.
Yes.
And some people, not everybody can do it. If you have a standards-based program, not everybody can meet that standard. And I think that's a good thing, personally. Not to say that those people, you know, we don't enjoy their company. They're not good people. They're not good in the woods. But, you know, if you design something that everybody is going to achieve, then it doesn't carry a lot of weight in my mind.
Absolutely. I mean, you have to. It's easy in today's world to have a little bit of knowledge, and a lot of people follow you, right? Because you do your research real quick, and then you just regurgitate what you were just taught or what you just heard, and so people think you're some sort of guru, but yet you really have no time in the woods. You really have no time swinging axes, using knives, lighting fires, cooking over fires, paddling canoes, you know, all the things that are the skills-based things. And I think that by setting a standard, it won't be cheapened. You can't go, well, I went through and I got my journeyman, and then, you know, they pin a canoe on a rock and wrap it around, and, you know, you're like, okay, buddy, maybe you should self-assess. But
you made a really good point a little bit ago about how the romanticism often is not part of the daily experience. You know, more of the daily experience is hard work, it's labor, it's sweating and doing all those things. And I think about that. We have a saying, like, on the winter trail, if we're out snowshoeing, like, you know, there's time for the romanticism at the end of the day. When everything else is done, then you get those moments where maybe you walk out onto a frozen lake and at sunset and, like, smoke a pipe or just stand there and listen to the ravens call in the distance, and you're like, wow, this is awesome.
Yes.
But what got you there was, like, the other 15 hours of hard labor where you're sweating, hauling sleds, pretending to be a sled dog and haul a sled that's probably too overloaded for you. And then when you get done with that, you got to swing axes and put up a wood pile and saw up wood and set up tents and, you know, all those things. And it's not that it's any easier or more difficult winter versus summer. It's just the skill sets are a little bit different. But I know I consciously tell people that a lot in the winter, that we can have time to reflect and things, but let's do it when all the work is done, instead of, like, wake up in the morning and then spend all morning reflecting and then trying to cram all the work into the last hour of the day. That's not a good recipe for success.
I honestly think that's why I love it. I love those moments, right? When I'm on the river, I've been working all day, and you get that breeze and the bugs go away for a minute, right? Or you're in the middle and that you just get that nice breeze, and you look around and you hear the birds and you see the river and you see the trees, and just in that moment, spending 1 minute in that moment is worth every other moment prior to it, right? It's indescribable, the peace that you can find in those in-between times, right? And I think that the people who really love it, that's what we're working for, right? I know it's not going to be a party the whole time. I'm not here for that. I'm here for that split second of sheer pleasure that is indescribable, you know. So
I had a moment like that the other day. We were out were we on the river? And I remember saying it was like a nice cooler morning and the bugs weren't attacking me for like 5 minutes, and I was like, okay, it's nice to get a couple of minutes like this every few days, mm-hmm. and remember why we really like it out here. Yes. You know, yeah. It's to get a moment like that. But I think, you know, life is a series of moments, and to really appreciate it. like it's been raining for 4 days and then the wind changes and the sky clears and you get like that first like perfect couple of minutes and you take a deep breath and you're like, okay, I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be right now.
And how many times, right, when you're inside your house, when you're sitting inside your house and that temperature changes and that front moves through, just standing outside or being in the woods when that front changes and you can feel literally humidity changes and the birds start singing differently and you just feel everything in your environment change. To be able to experience that it's tremendous. So I know I'm going on about this stuff, but
no, I think it's great because I also believe that it's just a huge gift.
It is.
So here's a question for you. I think about things from time to time, and I'm curious if the challenge that a lot of people face is a symptom of kind of modernism. Like our lives are so, in modern Western cultures, our lives are so cushy. They're so easy where you could go, I mean, if you lived in a city and worked inside and lived inside, like you could literally never get bit by a bug ever as an adult.
Yes.
You could never really be inconvenienced by weather or climate. You're going from an air conditioned or heated office to a car to a house to a, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So is it harder for modern people to deal with those challenging things like the physical challenge, the monotony, the difficulty of living outdoors? Would it be easier for, say, non-Western people or for previous generations than for this generation? That's part one of the question. But I think it would be easier for more physical cultures to live this way. What do you think?
I agree with you. The thing is I always come back to everything is a mental game, right? Physically, I'm larger than my ancestors. Physically, I'm stronger than my ancestors, right? So there's nothing that should hold me back on that end, right? And so it really is the mental game of saying, look, we talked about baseline, in fact, on the last podcast I was on. We talked about lowering baselines and setting expectations that are, I believe, higher, but you know, to the rest of the world, you would think they were lower, right? But you just... One thing I find when I'm at home is anxiety, right? And I know people who live in cities and live in town, and anxiety just seems to be a strain that lives through most people's lives. And I listened to a guy who said that the antidote to anxiety is action, right? And that's what I love about being out here, and that's what I think was different between us and our ancestors, is they lived lives of action. Right, they had to get up and they had to do these things, and they were accountable to everyone in their community, and they were accountable to themselves and to their families. So they had to live these lives of action. And what modern society does is it takes away those responsibilities from us, and it takes away ownership for our own lives. If I can order everything in, and I never have to leave my house, and I can work on the computer, and I can, you know, parent my children through, you know, being a parent when I'm not staring at my phone because I'm just giving them off to the schools or to whoever. I think that is what modern society allows us to do, is kind of, it takes ownership from our own lives. And when we're out here, you can't do anything but take ownership.
That's an interesting point. So here's part two of my question for modern people. We have great cell phone coverage at the field school. There's a tower. I don't know how tall it is. It's a giant cell phone tower. And it's like less than a mile from the field school. And there's nobody living around here. I think Masarda's population is under 200 now. So like 5 bars of cell phone coverage at the field school. So my question is, does having cell phone coverage make it harder or easier for people to live that lifestyle? Like, I know the happiest times for me of the year is when we're off the grid somewhere on a trip, doing an expedition. Mm-hmm. I love the lifestyle. I love that at the end of the day, everybody can't retreat and stare at their phones, and people actually interact with one another. But I also realize it's a double-edged sword, because if you're out here for a long time and you didn't have that link back to your other life, like, it'd be hard on relationships, hard on family life. And I just am curious what you think. At the end of the day, does the fact that there's good cell phone coverage here make it easier or harder for that mental game for living long term?
I think it's like rehab, right? It's like asking somebody if they enjoy rehab, right? That that it's good, right? That not having your phone and having that disconnection is a good thing.
So your analogy is that we're all addicts.
We are absolutely,
all addicts.
Absolutely, we are absolutely addicts, right? And I think back to, when I was in the Marine Corps and we would deploy, there was no such thing as cell phones, and so I would have to go to the E Club and use where you put the coin in, a toll phone, and call my wife, call my family at the time.
Payphone?
A payphone, yeah. And I didn't think anything of it. It wasn't a big deal. I didn't think, and I remember thinking then, well, man, someday I'll be able to talk to my family on a screen, and it'll be the future. But I think that yes, it would be hard for me personally as a father, as a husband. That would be very difficult to not be able to speak to my kids daily, speak to my wife daily, be able to be a part of their lives. But at the same time, I'm just like you. When we go out and we don't have a signal, it's like you're released of some burden. I'm not quite sure how to put my finger on that. But
the monkey off your back,
yes,
right? You're not expected to keep up and stay current.
Yes.
Long-time listeners have probably heard me discuss, in 1995, I did a 30-day primitive living experiment in Alaska. Really set me firmly on the path that I'm still on today. And just what an amazing experience. And this was pre-internet for me. I didn't have email yet. I didn't have any of that stuff. And so when I came home, I made a plan and went back up to Alaska the next year, spent a bunch of time there. But I remember when I left home, that the first time when I flew out, right? Spent the month, spent a couple extra weeks. We canoed the Swan Lake canoe route, a couple of guys and I, and then flew back. Second time, I bought a 12-foot travel trailer down the road. And I remember when I was leaving, I was pulling that thing to Alaska in my old 4-cylinder Toyota truck. And that was quite the trip. It took a while to get there. But I remember, at the time, long-distance phone calls were expensive. They had phone cards, but it was $1 a minute. So you wouldn't, and if you're kind of a poor young person, you're not spending that kind of money. So basically, I remember standing in the driveway, and I gave my mom and my dad a hug, and I said, I'll write you a letter. And I was gone. And that was it. And when you were gone in those days. It wasn't I've got a sat communicator and we can FaceTime tonight.
Well, he's sharing his location. We'll check his location. No, he's okay.
Yeah, but it was I can't imagine, as a parent, they were just all right, son, be safe, see ya. And then I drove off literally across the continent and had crazy adventures and stuff. And maybe I'll share some of them with you guys sometimes. But was it easier for me then to go do that because I was out of touch, than it would be for somebody to come up here and spend a couple of months where at the end of every day, hey, look, I can look at other people who are living with a very high baseline. I can look online and see people at fancy resorts and, not getting bit by bugs and being served awesome food and, having that cushy lifestyle. So, and I don't have a good answer for this. I think for me, it would be more difficult, but I couldn't do it because, again, you wouldn't speak to your family, you wouldn't have this, you wouldn't have that.
But it's difficult.
It's difficult. And maybe we were talking before we hit the record button. Maybe the solution is to be very intentional with your screen time. It's like any other awesome tool. Think of the guy who invented television. And then he's thinking, this can revolutionize communication between people. And then flash forward a few years and late at night, crappy infomercials trying to sell third-rate products. And so it's not the tool. It's not the fact that it's a cell coverage or a sat communicator. It's really how we use the tool. And I think the solution maybe is being super intentional about how you use that tool. And maybe, like we were talking before, maybe it's not trying to keep up with all the latest opinions and political news or anything like that. Maybe it's, using it to pursue things that feed you, that feed the good part of you. You know, maybe you're listening to an audiobook or a podcast about a topic that interests you, and it's not just randomly scrolling or.
And that's tough in today's world, right? Because things are changing so quickly in so many levels with politics and wars, and you know, I have young boys, so that's something, you know, as a veteran, that's something that concerns me is, you know, what is the state of the world? But you know, you can only eat that stuff so much before it starts to eat you, right?
And like the best and brightest minds for a generation have done two things. Number one, find out more efficient ways. Yes. And number two, design these software apps that like totally are monopolizing your brain and all the, you know, the dopamine hits. Yes. And so it's all designed to have you not be able to look away.
No,
which makes it that much harder.
You are set up to lose.
Yeah.
You have everything working against you to lose. And that's why, I don't know, for some people it should be just that challenge alone should be something that motivates you, right? Like, oh, okay, I'm more challenged for my time than any generation in the history of human beings, right? And maybe in the future, if we correct our path, I want my ancestors to be able to look back and go, man, look at great-great-great-great-grandpa. If that's even a thing that they can do, and they'd be like, you know, when everybody else was going crazy, look at him. He was in the woods cooking dinner over a fire.
And
right,
being sane.
Yeah, and being sane, and like, even if you look back at you can look back on your great-great-grandfather's internet history then, right? Because you can purchase it somehow from one of these data companies, and they'll see like, oh, yeah, Grandpa was like he was all right, man. He's looking up like cool stuff and like.
Or the alternative is like, oh, here's a picture of great-great-great-grandpa, like staring at Instagram on his phone for 30 years.
Oh, he had 30 OnlyFans subscriptions. You know what I mean? You're like, oh, awesome. You know what I mean? But that stuff matters, man. So, I don't know. I think, coming out here, you're fighting. It's a mental game, right? Because you're fighting the mental game of society and living in modernity, and then you're also living this very primitive lifestyle that's hard and foreign to you and takes more effort and planning, which is very different than modern life, right? So it definitely is a little bit of cognitive dissonance there at first. But I think that we all have it in our DNA where we know, I'm doing this. This is the right way. This is the right way.
Yeah, when you're doing something, no middleman. You're swinging an axe, You're putting up wood, you're cooking over the fire, and there's something about it that just agrees with you.
You sleep better, I'll tell you that right now.
Yeah, it definitely agrees with me.
Yeah.
But at the end of, like, if I succumb to the glowing rectangle and stare at it for an hour, usually at the end of that hour, I'm more unhappy than when I started. Yes. So I think, just the challenge is to be very intentional with those things.
So we'll also be offering philosophy classes now here at MIT, Masardis Institute of Technology.
Oh, good stuff. Yeah, I feel like, wow, we get pretty deep in the weeds there.
That's good.
Yeah. Well, maybe we should leave it at that. Thank you for spending this time with us. Thanks for listening. If you enjoy this show, leave us a comment or share it with somebody. And we'll hit you up again before too long.
Hope to see you in the future.
Have a good day. You have been listening to the Jack Mountain Bushcraft Podcast. For more information on our professional wilderness guide training programs that are college accredited and GI Bill approved, visit us on the web at jackmtn.com.